Hi, welcome to Caffe Lena's Poetry Night. This is our first pandemic poetry night that we've had. It's not really going to be, we typically have a featured reader and an open mic. Tonight we're not going to be able to have that open mic part, but what we thought you could do if you would like is share a poem in the comment section or the chat section on YouTube, and then it'll be there for everyone to read. Maybe suggest a shorter poem, it'll fit better, or do your poem in segments. So, because we do miss having everyone in the house and we miss sharing your work, so if you want to share your work that way, that'll be nice. And it is, while we love it hearing you read, it's also nice to be able to, see your work on the page and get to see that part of it as well. So I'm looking forward to reading what people post. We are here tonight with the poets that I had asked to read in April and May, Barbara Unger and Philip Memmer. So let's hear it for them. They're in the house tonight. They're going to clap for themselves. Yay, we're here. So I'm going to start off with my work, and then we're going to have Phil come up, and then Barbara's going to follow. If you want to make any comments, it's in the chat stream is going. So I am going to start off with a poem called Prayer for the Sorrowful Brain. So everyone came in here tonight saying, we're not going to read sad poems. And I was like, yeah, too late. But just a couple. So this is called Prayer for the Sorrowful Brain. What world have you made with your tight dangle of parts? Let your neurons be knit again with lanolin-soaked wool, yarn that's been tinged with sumac, goldenrod, onion skin, mint. Let your sparks become diamonds, your folds become marble, your nodules jade. Let your every bit glint into citrine, amethyst, quartz. You are a sculpture of jewels, you conglomerate brain, a brooch among brooches. Let this configuration of fiber and gem be washed in a gush of medicinal oil. Your stitches are pulsing with color, together, together, together. And just a reminder to our wonderful audience that we did agree that we would clap for this performance. So the next poem I have is, it's hard to not acknowledge the protests and the unrest that's going on due to the systemic racism that we have had going on forever. So this is not specifically about that situation, but I was trying to think of it as sort of like a sign that I would hold up if I was at a protest tonight. A very long, awful sign, but as a poem, it's different. So this is called Tribe, and I use the word tribe in the sense that in all of us, our ancestry, if you take it back far enough, we started with a group of people, like a family, like a connection of people that, even if you go back as far as just mother and child, that we all have that root. So it's this sort of an imagined past. I once lived in a tribe and remember the dawn risings, the smooth dirt floor, springing from sleep unalarmed, eager to separate from the now unsoft land of dreams. I remember a star, a radiant configuration. How corny the center was, love, but this is how we lived. We painted pictures of the kind of love that looks like a hailstorm blackening the sky behind a wide, bare oak. We made dolls constructed of bone and fiber to tell about a love that circled, a loves of tilt and shine. We stacked stones to talk about a love that reaches into your womb and beats a drum, fills your body with rhythmic hums, stops beating, the story coming fully alive in the silence between. We told stories of love for skin and fur, stories of river love, how the sky might have loved us today with ethereal clouds. Love was a grain of sand, it was a mountain. We woke to love, ate breakfast without despair, and prayed for any among us unskilled at finding love. We did not own, we rocked, remembering the rocking lull of our mother's walk, the sacred, undeniable motion of love. Forward, forward, forward. Our mouths we learned and strived to leave with flavors of mint and spectacular autumn. We accumulated love like children, let them crawl on our bodies, pulling our limbs into new shapes of love. With their smallness, we grew large with love. Our eyes meeting over the vast piles of love we sweated and strained to carry. We sewed them clothes of love, and when they felt happy, they rushed into our arms and chanted rhymes of love we never forgot. We set the children like minnows of love to float into rivers that flowed them to oceans that grew them to whales. We were born in love, dropped into pots of love. We simmered until the tender meat of love fell from our bones. We died in love. We became love. We strung disparate loves together web-like, rejoiced when the everyday dew sparkled at delicate joints. We painted the sky with dreams of love, understood wind was a mutable canvas. Sometimes we followed the stars to love, that nail-strewn, hot coal path. We understood the dear parts of ourselves that fell in love with shadows cast by their own looming fear, stood vigil for those lost in the alluring labyrinth. We had small use for shame. We swept up crumbs of love, poured them into a conglomerate compost, trusting the turn, the reliable ferment. We planted seeds of love, saved from plants of love, grown from seeds we had saved. We had generations of love, webbed eternity-wise, concentrically ringing. We loved up and down as the sun, thin and fat as the moon. We breathed love in and out, stared at the gaping whole puzzles of love until a piece that would snap into place came to hand. We walked hand in hand with love through dry, hot days and frigid desert nights. We walked through frozen tundra with love, swam oceans with love, became lost in vast prairie fields of love, drinking sky and letting wind shape our bones. We climbed trees, loved in the canopy of branches, forgot what the ground was. We traveled the bright, dark world hand in hand with love when we were lucky and brave. I don't remember when that tribe was lost, when the drip of violence cracked and bulged our ceiling until it fell, moldy in, when the new violent beast swallowed our pure child eggs and spat them out, tainted with the barest stink of cruel. I don't remember under what sky that imbalance was birthed, what shapes the stars had turned to, but we once lived in tribes centered in love. Our hearts are the beat of that forbidden drum. Do you ever feel lucky? What are we, if not brave? Thank you. So my next poem is about chickens. I figured, why not have a poem about chickens? And I also want to say, Caffe Lena is not charging tickets for any of their events now, as they're all online, but there is a tip jar in the corner of the stage here. It's a couple easy steps. You can donate some money to the cafe. And this next poem is called Alarm at Dawn. When the riotous clucking of chickens careens you from sleep at 5 a.m., you find yourself barefoot in wet grass, struck by the sight of a bronze fox leaping in gorgeous pursuit, of zigzagging chickens dizzy with fear. And while you love the fox, her grace and fur, her pulsing hunger, you shout, "Hey!" as if you had the means to harm her. The fox split-second turns, dances like a good sport into the black woods. The birds have fled to separate corners and straggle slowly back, clucking softly for reassurance. One hen has lost what looks like half her feathers in a damp clump, a monument to survival. It's okay now, you say, tossing feed, but their chicken brains are ruffled. Take till noon to smooth back to routine. That business of pecking at the ground, flocking together, the everyday laying of hope inside a resilient shape. And this next poem is a very personal poem. It's about my appendix that I had removed a few years ago. It's a bit of a confessional poem. I appreciate you listening. It's called The Appendix. The appendix believed she was part of the large intestine. She didn't have an origin story. At digestive tract meetings, she dangled silently. Sometimes they forgot to leave her a chair. She had ideas for departmental improvements, but knew she needed more clout before she could speak. At parties, she hung at the edges of conversations, contributed comments that no one bothered to hear. She was in love with the liver, But who wasn't, that dark wail of an organ? You are beautiful and vital, she told herself. They would be lost without you. She wasn't getting any younger. She knew that. She threw herself into the task of harboring digestive bacteria. She harbored impeccably. She harbored with zeal until she harbored the wrong crowd. No one answered her calls to 911. That's just typical, she said, in her first bitter tone. She swelled in self-pity and found comfort in her smarmy new friends. Everyone's got some good in them, she rationalized, making room for a few more. When finally someone noticed, when the bright light of attention held her in its glare, she capitulated almost violently. "I'll be good," she sobbed. "I didn't mean it," she pleaded. But the handcuffs were already clamped to her wrists. The large intestine pulled back from the commotion, the bad taste. "I knew she'd be dragged off someday," whispered the colon, as her wails faded out in the distance and a thick hush fell over them all. And this next poem is in a similar vein. It's about an ironing board, not my ironing board, but someone else's. It's called The Ironing Board. The ironing board hasn't left the closet in years. She sneezes at her own dust, clatters on to the damp map about the old basement laundry, the joys of never being collapsed. "I used to hold things," she says. She goes on about the iron and that tricky heat, the ashtray, the cigarettes with their smooth spirals of smoke, the Diet Pepsi always tinkling her ice. The ironing board was essential and sturdy in her time. Her crossed T legs held up countless indeterminate moments. Every day she stood in front of that washer and dryer like exact proof of a mother. Now she's given up her dream of a new wardrobe of linen shirts. She makes a dash for it one spring cleaning afternoon, lets her sturdy legs take her on a giddy, hobbling flight. No one hears from her for months. There's an uncomfortable hope that she's made it to the edge of town, has found some peace and repurpose at the city dump. She turns up eventually in the park, feeding chunks of bread to intransient ducks. "I miss the cigarettes," she says to a mallard, "and the Pepsi and the melting ice." She leans back against the sun-warmed bench. "The iron was kind of a bastard," she breathes, folding and unfolding her legs. And then this is the last poem in that vein. It's called The Haiku. I wrote it when I was working in a very small used bookstore right next to the shelf of poetry that no one ever looked at. This is called The Haiku. The haiku realizes several syllables later that weather patterns have changed, that she's wearing a bikini over goose-pimpled skin. In a cold blast of starting over, she grabs a run-on sentence out of a 5-page essay on the Industrial Revolution and wraps it scarf-wise around her neck. She knits a thick dress out of lines unraveled from randa Wikipedia entries. The woolly facts loop and bind, keep her skin free from artistic drafts. She plucks a hat from the local section of a newspaper, lets minor assaults and drug busts insulate her scalp. She found a pair of boots in Walmart's book aisle and laces the best-selling stuff tightly to her feet. She starts eating pizza in front of the TV. No more baby salad greens drifting gently onto her plate. She takes to sleeping late and avoiding mountains. She keeps in touch with her sister haikus, listens to their short bursts of waterfalls and birds, but can't contribute to those conversations. She longs for work that is fleshed out, something how-to or hilarious, something unput-downable or authoritative and vast in scope. She starts watching sunsets while eating ice cream and weighing her options. A cookbook occurs to her during one chocolatey orange display. A cookbook, she considers, is something to drip batter on, leave open to the heartbreak of unpredictable grease. A cookbook, she thinks, sitting down her empty bowl and licking her spoon with lazy, rambling directions, recipes with 17 ingredients each. Just a couple more here. This poem is, in December, my husband we sort of started our shutdown in one way then. He had some surgeries that he had to undergo, and this is one poem about towards the end of that experience. This is in an office at the movement disorder clinic while the neurologist experiments with different levels of voltage to your new implants. I try to assemble an 8-piece plastic puzzle of the human brain. The stubby screws in the cerebellum poke out, exposed to the cold air. I have to leave these parts to nestle in the temporal lobes untethered. It's the best I can do, which means I can't put the brain back on its base. I have to leave the puzzle upside down on the counter, brainstem tilted toward the door. Brainstem tilted towards the doctor who asks you again to open and close your left hand. And that is in a style of poetry where the title is longer than the poem itself. And this next poem, I was talking to my son about what to read, and he said, well, there's always that poem that we always hated as your children, and it's for stepping back when you're caretaking, taking those times to step back and stop giving for a minute. It's called Out of Crackers. I don't care if I'm out of crackers or flour or short grain brown rice. Let stale cereal work for dinner. Let the cupboards be contact paper bare. I don't care. I don't care if I'm out of butter, if there's no margarine or jelly. This week here, it's winter. I have no eggs, milk, or cheese. There's no bread, salt, or onions. I'm out of meat, tofu, beans. I want this created nothing. I want this kitchen table stare at my clean, dry, empty. I want to play solitaire on Formica. I don't care who bangs on my door. I won't even turn. I want to lick dust from my fingers, knit cobwebs into a luminous hat. I don't care if you want me back. This is my black and white sunset, my stark vacation bliss. This is my honeymoon with Collie. I will stay in this one-room tundra until the gamble pays, until the 3 cherries spill silver and I care again to feel hunger, drink color, summon food. And this poem is, I wrote for my son and his wife for their wedding. That was 5 years ago now, and it's instead of giving them a poem about the celebration of love, I gave them a poem about somehow magically getting through the hard times that always come up. So this is called Dissolving the Distance Between You. Pour water over the deeply frozen earth, skate deftly across the divide. Boil maple sap in the open air, the aroma a soft lure. Aim your arrows at flocks of words spoken but not meant. Follow the path of strewn feathers. Measure the gulf between you with an inaccurate ruler, one that shifts scale between atoms and stars. Nap in the full sun. Let the sprouting grass rise through your bones. Wake up side by side. Collect pebbles. The close attention to ground will bring you to the same stone. Talk to the wind. Forget what you're looking for. Touch the petals of flowers with no thought for a vase. Give up ever arriving at the door. It's the black crow intoning from a seed of dream. That's the syllable that will save you. Thank you, Barbara and Phil. You've been wonderful. This is my last poem, and again, this is a poem in respect to the people that are out protesting. It's called In the Streets. We are still in the streets. We are still in the streets, a glut of protest. We are still stopping the subways, blocking all traffic. We are still in the streets. We've never stopped marching, our arms still uplifted, our signs piercing the sky with words we will live by. We are still in the streets. Our anger is exponentially expanding, a deep ocean current pressing us forward. Our vigilance is unceasing, a many-eyed creature. We are asleep and we are watching. We are still in the streets. Our guttural roar, a tidal wave rushing, a foaming wall growing, erupting from the clap of fear. We are moving across landscapes, a determined respect gathering, countless shapes and shades and constructs of love. We are still in the streets. We are a sonic boom of voices. Our words have flown past the atmosphere, colliding with the pulsing stars that have changed us. We have changed the shapes of the stars. We mirror the mutinous constellations of peace. We are still in the streets. We are an acceleration of evolution of culture. We are rattling the rusted bars of cages. We are shaking loose the profit from jails, shaking loose the profit from war, shaking loose the profit from the 1%. We are sewing these dollars into inviolate blankets we place over the shoulders of anyone who is cold. We are still in the streets. We are banging the windows. We are shaking the ground. We are vibrating the air. We are pouring out and washing over. We are that force of love and water. We are submerging what is not laced with compassion. We are still in the streets. We are still shouting. You can hear us in the pulse of your blood pumping forward. We are still in the streets of our homes and our jobs and our fields and our alleys and our schools and our woods and our skyscrapers and our mountains. We are plotting and stomping and marching for justice and peace. We are still in the streets. All right, our next poet up is Philip Memmer, who came here from Syracuse. Thank you so much for coming. He's the author of 5 books of poems. His newest book is Pantheon, which just came out in 2019 from Lost Horse Press. He has been the winner of the 2009 Idaho Prize for Poetry. He has appeared in many notable literary journals. He's been in the Library of Congress's Poetry 180 project. He's the founder and director of the YMCA's Downtown Writers Center in Syracuse, New York, which is a wonderful institution, which he is just telling us about. They're doing a lot of online programs right now. So it's the Downtown Writers Center in Syracuse. He has a website, Philip Memmer, where you can look at his books and purchase them. He is also the associate editor for Tiger Bark Press. Philip Memmer.
Good evening, world. I'm going to start out tonight with a poem by Lucille Clifton, who was the first contemporary poet I ever was exposed to, really. And this seemed like a good way to start tonight. It's an untitled poem from her book, Quilting. I am accused of tending to the past as if I made it, as if I sculpted it with my own hands. I did not. This past was waiting for me when I came, a monstrous, unnamed baby, and I, with my mother's itch, took it to breast and named it history. She is more human now, learning language every day, remembering faces, names, and dates. When she is strong enough to travel on her own, beware, she will. So this book, Pantheon, that came out a little over a year ago, is kind of just what it says on the tin. It is a collection of poems written in the voices of imaginary god characters. Not the usual suspects, but sort of modeled on my own quirky idea of a mythology. And this is the first of those voices, the god of masks. How many shapes must a god take to attract your notice? I tried them all. I came as sunlight through clouds, as a moon full and unobstructed, as fire and various things afire. I came as a man bent with age, a woman hardened by war. I came to you as each sort of animal, and as trees and the lily and the rose. As a mountain I came to you, as the sea, as stars over vast distances arranged in suggestive shapes. Nothing worked. Though I came to you with 3 faces, with 100 hands, a woman's frown upon the body of a lion, an elephant's smile on the body of a man, though I came as wealth and as famine, as thunder and as drought, nothing lifted your gaze, though you claimed to seek me, and I despaired. And in my despair I ripped out my 100 arms, tore off my 1,000 masks, let cool my fires beyond counting. I came to you as darkness and silence. And you, so enamored of absence, now you see me, now at last you hear. So while we've been shut down due to the pandemic, I've not been commuting to work every day. And normally I have an hour drive from my home in Clinton, New York, to downtown Syracuse and back. I don't miss it, I gotta say. I don't miss it much. But a lot of those home commutes are late at night, either after teaching a class or after a reading, after carousing after a reading. And so this poem is sort of a little ode to my drives home. This is the god of driving alone in the middle of the night. You could be anyone, on your way to anywhere. Doesn't much matter when you're asleep. And oh, are you asleep? Despite coke and heavy metal and the window in January rolled halfway down, you are out. Dreaming for only I know how long, on this dark highway so mercifully straight, you might, as a passenger, have woken up rested. Where are you going? You're about to remember. But this, from the start, was your destination. This gravel shoulder where you're shaking and gripping the wheel, praying out loud to whoever you think might hear. Not me, traveler. Those were my high beams splitting the road down the middle. That was my horn, 4 screams still echoing with your own. The devil-red glow you pant in is from my taillights. I'm gone, and I'm not slowing down. Don't follow. Someone else will have to bless you now. I'm scheduled to go to the Outer Banks for a vacation in August. I hope it happens. Who knows? But this is a poem that I sort of always see as being set at the Outer Banks. It's called The God of Sand. Father, you cry out, I'm drowning, forgetting I watched each stroke as you swam to these depths. Nothing less could have pleased you. Here on shore, in the paradise of the wide umbrella, we have wine and smoked salmon, gleeful children, youth dressed to stun the sun. And yes, though the water was cold, though against your face broke wave after hard green wave, still all you craved was this. No longer the earth beneath your flailing legs, no longer loved ones' voices from the receding beach. You did it. You voyaged beyond my reach. If now you find your chosen craft too frail, well, what can I say? You have everything you wanted. Stop praying. This next poem has the dubious honor of being the poem that I think has taken me the longest start to finish. I started the poem in a hotel room at an Associated Writing Programs conference way back in 2012 or so, and then finally finished at the very end of 2017. And every month or so, I'd pull it out of the drawer and scream at it and delete things, and then throw it back in. Until finally I was happy with it. It is called a muse. Because you prayed, because you begged and wept, I decided just this one time to answer your tiresome pleas for inspiration. This took some doing, more than you might imagine. First, of course, I had to find a worldly thing to move you in a world of things by which you refused to be moved. And then, my choice made, I had to arrange not just the vision itself, but the paths of many lives, so that I might ensure some fragment of your attention. That fog on the day of your auto inspection, I did that, me. All flights out of Des Moines delayed, countless connections botched, meeting after meeting inconvenienced. And this poor consultant, Keaton, Ph.D., can you guess why just this once he checked his briefcase, and within it his presentation? Even I can't say just where it went. Not to his luncheon, long scheduled with Molly Coyne, CPA. Such consternation, but she did her best, kept cool until her husband, Robert Coyne of Coyne & Co. Automobile, climbed up from beneath your car to take her call. And thus upon Robert Coyne there fell not merely his wife's fresh rage, but the rage of consultants and pilots, gate agents and infants, young mothers stuck exasperated on tarmacs, lovers in distant cities, inconsolable, a whole people conjoined in a sudden, strange frustration. Small wonder your good, reliable Bob left a few bolts loose. And lo, you have at last arrived as I intended, in the precise place and moment I created in answer to your cries, down one driver's side tire, but otherwise safe. Here, a copse of roadside trees in peak spring, a perfect green you might, on another day, have sped right by. Up to you now, poet. Make something worthy of their dismay. It is time. The coins are waiting. And Keaton, poor bagless Keaton, expects you to rhyme. This is the god of extinctions. You do right to lament the coming departure of the black rhino. Such a noble beast, its moment so close to an end. Touching. Though honestly, I find myself, at least, more moved by the distant passing of greater beasts. The woolly rhino of the Pleistocene, for example, or long-legged Paraceratherium, graceful creatures beside whom your black rhino would seem humble. Its stampeding, by comparison, small, a mere mumble on the plain. You can't recall them as I do, though from your fossil record, your artists do their best. I, of course, recall the canvases of the first of your kind, those bygone giants who not only tamed and rode the forebears of your hapless, horned beasts, but taught them to paint, to sculpt, to make poems in 100 long-forgotten tongues. Impossible, you stammer. You who have taught the proud rhinoceros nothing, not even to be afraid of poachers or to tremble at those clumsy anthems you coax out of bits of its horn. If long-lost Paraceratherium had heard your songs, she might have mourned, finding within your coarse sounds that inevitable age where the last 3 or 4 of your kind, surrounded by concerned caretakers, fail to mate in a cage. That would have bothered her. Despite your viciousness towards her offspring, the last cries even of such as you would not have pleased her. She would, as I do, have forgiven you. Her sighs would have shaken the ground. This is called Your God's God. The God you no longer believe in no longer believes in me, although, like you, that hardly stops him from calling my name. I ignore him, of course, the way most of the time your God ignores you, assured as only a God could be it's for his own good. And you? I wouldn't know you exist, except his prayers, constant, yearning beyond your imagination, are full of you. And though you are not my concern with this extra heaven between us, still I think of you because he thinks of you, believes with all of his being I conceived him to conceive of you, as someone, I know not who, must once have conceived of me. You who are not a God, listen close to the silence that echoes your calls, and understand you feel exactly what I feel when, before the Creator I've long since given up on, I finally kneel. It's the God of everything but the soul. Your body, yes, even now in its last fine costume, especially now with the lids shut, voice stilled, not one bit of glitter in the eyes, no longer stories or songs or late-night heart-to-hearts. Laugh lines, sure, why not? But better without laughter, please. I don't need your delights or derisions. Easier this way. Your mind without its decisions, each thought unbound from each word gently disentangled from the others, loosed at last from the strangling weight of sentences, saying. I want you not as sculpture but clay, not portraits or landscape but horsehair, canvas, paint, and beside your easel and palette, the small couch where you liked to daydream, and behind it, a tall, bright window looking out on the world. These, couch, window, world, not your daydreams, not what you loved in the world. What could it matter to me what you loved in the world? I have just two more, and then we get to hear Barbara. This is for all the writers out there listening. A reminder, the God of importance. That book you loved, the heavy one listing your heaven words, your human words, and what they mean. It's still where you left it all those years ago, on the crowded bottom shelf, 3 books from the left, in the parlor by your rented summer room. Since then, it's not been opened, it's not been touched, except by the housekeeper, dusting. The same housekeeper you knew so many summers back, years older now, yes, but her step still quiet, her voice still like a bell. She still thinks of you, expects sometimes to see you sitting there with that book open to a page of words, the paper so thin she wonders which weighs more, the page or the words themselves. The words, she decides, remembering the book you wrote there, her favorite, now on her shelf at home. 2 copies, in fact, the way sometimes the faithful keep extra scriptures on hand to lend at need. I know, it sounds absurd. But why not, just this once, admit you might have mattered? Or if not you really, then at least your work. And if not your work itself, then the fact that she worked hard, and by so doing became a part of something she didn't expect, something only you and your goddamn humility can now take away. She dusts. She remembers you just for a moment, then gets on with the day. I'd like to close with a poem from My last book, The Storehouses of the Snow, and this is called Parable. The kingdom of heaven. It is like a field into which good men planted seed, into which a fool planted rocks, into which armies planted corpses and mines. The kingdom of heaven is like a seed carried from a good field to an island in the belly of a lost bird, and like the rock scraped hard though it crippled the plow, like a young man face down in a pit, like a landmine carefully hidden. The kingdom of heaven is like an island where nothing grows, pounded by waves. What is this place, wonders the bird, and how will I get home? And the kingdom is like a broken plow, around which a village fades, and like a letter folded in a pocket, he is only a boy, soaked through with rain. And it is a tripwire tied by a new father, how he misses them, to a spoke on a red tricycle. Help me, Father, for I am lost. Hear us, Father, for we are poor. It is the sound of your laughter I miss the most. It is the sound of their laughter I miss the most. The kingdom is a white flash and no scream. The kingdom is a set of teeth on a stainless steel table. The kingdom is erased from the atlases. The kingdom builds a nest and waits. And there, though you cannot sleep, you will be honored. And there you will be named and laid in a row. And there will be raised billboards by a highway. And there by the bones of a bird, a garden grows. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Philip. That was great. Let's hear it for Phil one more time and ask you to clap for yourself, since it's only Barbara out there. This, I could tell yours would have been, if we had a room full of people, yours would have been one of those beautiful, sustained, long applauses after it's over. Again, there's a tip jar in the corner to make donations to Caffe Lena, and if you'd like to add your open mic poem, you can put those in the comment section on YouTube. Our next talented poet up is Barbara Unger. Her 5th book is recently out, Save Our Ship. It won the Richard Snyder Memorial Prize from Ashland Poetry Press and was named to Kirkus Reviews Best Books of 2019. It's getting all kinds of glowing reviews. She also has a limited edition chapbook that just came out in March. It's called EDGE, which stands for the List of Evolutionarily Distinct and Globally Endangered Species. That is from Ethel Press. She is a professor of college at St. Rose in Albany, New York. She also teaches a writing workshop at Schenectady Library off and on, and she has a whole lot of devoted students. She's such a wonderful teacher, and she supports her students. She's a great community poet. So let's give her a huge welcome, Barbara Unger.
Oh, blinding. How's that? Can you hear me? Is that good? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carol. What a beautiful introduction. I always love to read at Caffe Lena. It feels so great here, and it's wonderful to read with Carol and Phil. It's a little strange. I haven't been out of the house in a long time, and I'm really taking to this self-isolation. It's bringing out my inner Emily Dickinson, and if it goes on much longer, I'm going to become full-bore agoraphobic. So I'm going to write a little poem about how much I love this new life, despite all the terrible things that are happening. So please forgive me for enjoying it. It's called Dunce. I love our new quiet life. We sit like naughty children in our corners, forced to learn what we should already know, that we are one. Thanks. You can just wait till the end. I'm going to read some very short poems, so maybe one big clap at the end would be great. And I'm from Minneapolis. I have to read one little short poem in honor of George Floyd. I learned to swim in Minnesota, in many of the 13 lakes in Minneapolis, and one of them has been renamed a few years ago, and you'll find out why in the poem. It's now called Lake Bidet-Makaska. It's called Privilege. I am swimming this hot May day on a deserted Adirondack beach in my white skin. I learned to swim in the lakes of Minneapolis, one named Calhoun, after a slave owner. Every time I put my face in, I hear, I can't breathe, and feel the knee on my neck. But I keep swimming. All right, so one reason that I, despite all the horrors going on in our world, that I'm enjoying my isolation is that I have been writing about apocalypse for a while now. The last book, Save Our Ship, I guess I call it Peri-apocalypse, that we're in now. And this is an alphabetical book based on a hideous alphabet written by Saint Antoninus of Florence in 1454 that was to teach women to keep their mouths shut because we are so evil, inherently evil. So the poems are arranged in alphabetical order, and I'm going to start with a little A poem called Ars Poetica. I love to comb a poem the way girls do their doll's hair, singing. As I brushed and braided mane and tail, curried every inch of the pony I owned only in words, and rode naked through town. Another writing poem. This is an E poem. It's called Emily Dickinson's Estate Sale. And the epigraph is from Melville, from Moby Dick. It is not down on any map. True places never are. Emily Dickinson's Estate Sale. I got her glasses and sunglasses, both surprisingly hip, and a blue fountain pen. I wanted to head out for the ocean, but you didn't. You were delighted with her liqueur glasses, delicate and tall, on 2 glass trays, and a remote for the ceiling light. You switched it on, dazzling. The estate was vast, with lots of visitors wandering through, yet not crowded with all. Not the cramped rooms in Amherst. Her other place, not on any map. Read 2 more from this collection. One is a prose poem, one of many S poems in the book, and it is a praise poem for all the delivery people who are saving our lives, especially in New York City, where I used to live and where this poem takes place. Sheer has an epigraph from Virginia Woolf. I have lost friends, some by death, others by sheer inability to cross the street. Sheer. I just left your old studio on West 4th Street for the last time, where you moved when we fell in love. We lived on $5 Cuban Chinese chicken and even cheaper wine, haunted the used bookstores that used to grace Manhattan. It was so sunny when I went up to say goodbye, you and your beautiful young blonde wife packing up to move to her house in Carroll Gardens. I put my sunglasses on and ran down the dark red staircase, past the pink pussycat, its windows full of black leather and chains I never looked back at. It was even darker outside, just starting to pour. Fumbling with a collapsible umbrella, I began to dash across West 4th when a bike delivery guy shouted so loud, "No!" I froze, as if playing statue. the ball of one foot half off the curb, the other mid-stride as wind slapped my face, the trail of a black SUV the size of Oklahoma stampeding past. "Thank you," I cried, not being dead yet. My guardian angel gone to bring someone pizza. I fixed the umbrella, looked both ways, and walked on water across the street. And I think I'll do just one more from this book. This is for Jean Burko Gleason, my double cousin, if she happens to be listening. This was a request. And it is called To You, You, the letter U. You dictated my place in line near the end, in class at the back, far as Timbuktu or Ultima Thule, close as my middle name, Louise. You begin the universe, true blue symbol of union in Venn diagrams and geometry. In the UK, you appear in color, labor, honor, but not in the US, though you stand for united, uranium, and university. You can be absolute in vodka and virtue, luxe as in furs and cruelty. Untrackable as Dersu Uzala, you moved here from Phoenicia via Upsilon and V. Doubled, you make W, as in making whoopee, or those Unitarians called UUs. You are I and I am you, ultimate umbilicus, root of everything, the and its negation, undone, unmanned, unmade. Uncountable, beyond number, umpteenth. Ulterior to utterance, you ululate. Uncanny U-Haul of memory with everything crammed inside. Unending as a hula hoop, Ouroboros, you swallow yourself up utterly. So that's SOS, Save Our Ship. And I'm not going to read more of the heavier climate and #MeToo poems from this collection, but if you want to see them, they're up on Ashland Poetry Press's Facebook page. I did a live streaming reading a couple of weeks back, so I didn't want to bore anyone by reading the same poems again. So I'm going to read now and close with a few poems from my new chapbook, Edge, which Carol introduced. And yeah, more peri-apocalypse. So I'm going to start with an early poem called Average Monkey, and the epigraph is from Stephen Hawking. We are just an average breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star, but we can understand the universe. 1. Remember sea glass? Sandwiches in waxed paper? A seahorse twines its delicate tail around a pink plastic Q-tip. We've made 1 billion elephants worth of plastic. Plasticos, pliable, from placine to mold. Our detritus descried in the deepest bellies of lanternfish, rakery beacon lamps, stout saw pallets, scaly dragonfish. When my father began to hallucinate, he saw heads in the dishwasher and cupboards. I know they aren't real, he said, but sometimes I wonder what they like to eat. 2. What to do with this dread? Take the long view, kalpas, unimaginable eons, the void. Oh, a mouth exhaling, first a universe, ultimately nothing. Everything that seems important to you isn't. Each atom, 9,999 parts empty space, 1 part vibrating energy. Things exist, but they are not real. I forgot to say that end is a quote from Mu Song's commentary on the Heart Sutra. Sorry. So most of the poems are about individual endangered species. And the next one is called The World's Tiniest Tarantula, which is Microhexura montivaga. Small as a BB, hidden under emerald moss on rocks, eating springtails in funnel-like webs, the spruce fir moss spider lives high up in the great Smoky Mountains. Their moss is drying out, their ancient forests skeletonized by an invader from Europe, the woolly adelgid. Who wants to save the tarantulas? Who even knows these exist? What little I knew of tarantulas came from Dr. No, the first James Bond film we saw at the mall one Christmas. Sean Connery's arachnophobia impressed me as much as Ursula Andress rising from the sea in her white bikini did my dad and brother. In a black bikini in the Bahamas, the first time I saw a live tarantula, I screamed. Our landlord, Errol Simonet, laughed and picked it up gently. Monkey-faced spider won't hurt you. The way the local diving boys laughed at our fear of sharks. You just punch them in the nose. We laughed at their fear of walking down the street in New York. Don't you get shot? No. We have met Dr. No, and he is us. Truer than ever, I'm afraid. I'm going to do two more. One is El Zunzuncito, which is the Cuban bee hummingbird, tiniest bird in the world. Melisuga heleni is its Latin name. And there's an epigraph from Juan Lembe, Birds of the Island of Cuba from 1850. There always exists one more beyond in the marvelous works of creation. El Zunzuncito. The smallest bird lives on nectar, named Zunzun for the whir of its wings, which invisibly trace infinity. Also Zumbite, buzzer, or Trovador, troubadour. Co-evolved with flowers, lime to sapphire, they can mate shimmering in midair. In spring, El Macho's head and neck grow brilliant pink, orange reds. He joins a lek, a band or team that sings and competes in intricate displays, in hoodies like iridescent lipsticks. Each female, a prom queen, can hook up with several machos. She'll still end up a single mom. Fed on orchids and sarsaparilla, she builds her cup-shaped nest alone, so tiny it can fit on a clothespin, in calabash or cashew tree. She gathers wool from ceiba trees or twisted air plant, lined with moss, down, fur, spiderweb for spandex. She lays 2 eggs like white coffee beans. Her blue-green plumage blends in. El Macho's god could give away the nest to hawks, falcons, even spiders. The chicks hatch blind. Naked red turns gold, then dull velvet with a cobalt sheen. For protein, she hunts mosquitoes the way hawks do pigeons, thousands a day, till the 2-inch pijones have fledged. Back on her liquid diet, she weighs less than a dime. She sips 1,000 blossoms a day of hummingbird or firebush, cup of gold or chalice vine. Birds so beautiful, in the 19th century, rich women wore them stuffed on their hats. And one more. I'm going to close with weight. And this is taken from the biomass distribution on Earth for the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the U.S., back when we had scientists. Yeah. And some of you might have read this study. Weight. Having measured life on Earth, we're found wanting. Humans, a mere 100th of a 100th of all the living. Life proves to be mostly trees. Only 100th in the 7 seas. 1/8 buried. Bacteria. Underground, more than 1,000 times more bacteria than us. Even worms outweigh us, 3 to 1. so does the lowly virus. Yet we have paved the earth with chicken bones. Weep into your soup. Under a third of birds fly free. The rest, poultry. Garden turned feedlot and slaughterhouse. Homo sapiens, 1/3 of all mammals, keep almost 2/3 to eat, mostly cow and pig. Only 4% left for all wild creatures, elephants to mouse. Half Earth's creatures have vanished in the last half-century while we've redoubled. Even half gone, plants outweigh us, 7,500 to 1. May they survive the plague of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. BarbaraUnger.net. You can find out more about her work and where to get her books. Philip Memmer, philipmemmer.com. I know if you put his name in, his website comes right up. Thank you so much for listening tonight. Caffe Lena, the first Wednesday of every month is poetry night at Caffe Lena since 2003. Thank you so much for listening from your home. Write poetry, read poetry. It's a good way to pass the time. Thanks again to Barbara and Phil. Have a good night.